Much for being here. My name is Kevin Ivester. I own and direct Ivester Contemporary, joined by Bradley Kerl, whose work we're all here to celebrate and sitting around. This is Bradley's third exhibition with the gallery. Bradley was one of those first few artists who I called and had admired his work for years before I ever even thought I could open my own gallery. I called him out of the blue and he gave me a shot, and I am like forever grateful to him for trusting me, so thank you.
Likewise, likewise.
Yeah. This exhibition is called Point of Light, and actually let's start with a short introduction. Could you tell us a little bit about where you are now?
Yeah. So as Kevin mentioned, this is the exhibition called Point of Light, and these are paintings from mostly from the past about 6 months. There's one painting that sort of predates a recent move, which I'll speak about shortly. And so it's all very fresh, very recent. Yeah, so a move from Houston, where I've been living for about 15, 16 years with my family for a job at LSU. We moved in August to New Orleans, and so it was nice to have this exhibition on the radar for that landing point to kind of force the issue, force myself back into a kind of rhythm and routine. And these are the paintings that kind of came out of that time. And I think it's a really cohesive, one of the more cohesive bodies of work I put together. Partially just having something really concrete, really sort of straightforward in a way, with all the kind of upheaval and personal life with the move, settling in, starting a new job, et cetera, et cetera. It was really important for me to have something kind of solid. So the Point of Light became really, really important, really powerful. And so a lot of these paintings are sort of like riffs on that idea, different ideas of the of point of light in various forms.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were mentioning that this was the first sort of painting that you started on as you were pulling this exhibition together. When did you realize that this show would be called Point of Light and start to hone in on, like, how many canvases in did the concept actually start to build?
It was a few in. This work sort of comes out of more recent body. The last exhibition I did in Houston before leaving was called Magic Hour. So it had this idea about specific time of day, specific light, specific kind of color palette. And so I had more ideas in that kind of, that sort of line, I guess. But I wanted to approach the idea of light slightly differently. And first painting, I think this one in the far back of the room, just titled Jungle Boogie Tulum, was the one where it really kind of clicked. I had the idea for the painting a long time ago. It's from a honeymoon trip in 2014 where I initially snapped the photograph. I made an etching at some point along the way, and then had always kind of saved the idea for this painting for a special occasion, for a rainy day, and moving turned out to be the perfect kind of rainy day situation. And in the process of painting that, I just sort of like jumped in. Sometimes I'll just jump into a painting. Other times I'll have a little bit of like a pretty set, I'll have a steady and I'll have a pretty set path into it. That one I wasn't quite sure. And so in the process of painting it, it was going well, but I knew it needed a kind of like, it needed something to kind of activate it, some kind of foil, some sort of spark. And so I knew I had this painting. And so the obvious sort of train of thought was adding some kind of point of light, some kind of like foil. And the sun in that painting was an invention added later on just to activate it. And so then when I realized I could, oftentimes I'll have to like remind myself when I'm painting that I can kind of do whatever I want. I can make inventions and do this and that. And so it was a nice reminder, like, oh, this is a way I can approach the show. And that's a great like handhold, really, like something very concrete as well to organize my thoughts and organize these paintings around. So fairly early on. And then the little painting around the corner here, it's like orange. Those two kind of happened in tandem. So it's the other.
This one and that one.
Well, yeah, around the corner.
Yeah.
Kind of happened in tandem. And the other guiding principle was the idea of big and small.
Yes. Yeah, so a big part of Bradley's process is collage too. I mean, these all you're referencing a lot of different imagery, but you're also combining things and piecing things together. And
Right. Yeah, and it's no one painting is really conceived and built the same way. Everything comes from like lived experience for the most part, so it's all kind of close at hand. Everything's more or less recognizable, and so within that, it's creating a situation where I can kind of riff and bob and weave a little bit is really important. So
yeah,
a lot of them, the construction starts with something kind of straightforward, and then again, it's like kind of whatever that painting needs, whatever that composition needs, I can kind of add things in, kind of create a story, create a narrative, or some kind of foil, like it's saying.
yeah. So you dropped in that sun on the big painting, and you were like, this is what this show is going to be about. When did the idea of wanting to explore the sort of relationship between large canvases and small canvases start, and why does it matter that a small canvas would have the same sort of like effect on a viewer
Right.
as a large canvas would?
That's actually the first, like, when you called me and invited me to do this show specifically, it was like my first thought I had, just like something that I've been wanting to do, kind of again saving for a rainy day, saving for a special occasion. And part of it comes from just like I love making big paintings and it's really fun to do, but it's I struggle with the small ones, and so it's like I'm always looking for, as an artist, always looking for ways to pull a rug out a little bit or sort of challenge myself. And so for me, making the small paintings is really an exercise in efficiency and economy. And when you're able to hit it just right, just kind of with the efficient kinds of marks, I like the idea of that tiny little 8x10 painting standing next to something like this and really holding its own. And it should be able to, I think. The scale doesn't really matter in that sense in terms of like painting stuff for me. When I think about scale, it's more of like I kind of have a picture in my head of like the image, and I'll sort of know that it needs to be a certain scale, either like body scale, human scale, or it can be something a little bit more intimate that can pull you in from across the room, which is another point of the idea of big and small. It's like the idea of organizing the show, like actually hanging it, creating dynamics, creating rhythm, creating some kind of contrast, really.
Yeah, I mean, the show came together really easily, and I was telling you while we were hanging it that I'm used to curating the space so things sort of start to come together and start. I like symmetry. The show is incredibly asymmetrical, and it was a fun challenge for me, but also like, I mean, it's hard because all you guys are here. Thank you so much. But there's this tiny painting next to that big painting that we were just talking about, and they look like they could be a diptych. I mean, they look like they match each other's energy so impressively. And another question about like sort of dealing with large paintings compared to small paintings is, how do you deal with the composition? Like I know that a lot of your paintings start with this sort of like underlying structure, and then as you're scaling them, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, again, these works specifically started with like the idea of the point of light and like the idea of that sort of celestial orb being almost like a symbol, or using it as a compositional foil. With the smaller paintings, thinking about some of the ones that are in here where the point of light is really tiny or the point of light is a little bit larger, it's sort of trial and error to a certain extent, and a lot of that is done in this sort of collage phase that you mentioned. I'll go into a mode where I'm just sort of like developing a whole body of ideas and images at a smaller scale, whether it be like physical collage, digital collage, drawings, watercolors, just sort of working it out that way. And I like the idea of this. Sometimes you'll hear people say, don't put a like circle, or don't
Oh, yeah.
Square canvas. The idea like never do this and that. I like to sort of like that challenge, like being told I can't do something or shouldn't do something. You kind of want to, contrary in a way, like kind of go towards that and prove people wrong, essentially. So that's I like the idea of toying with the composition that way.
Yeah, breaking certain rules.
Yeah, breaking certain rules.
And you just mentioned this sort of like celestial idea. I've been spending, of course, a lot of time with the work this week as we were installing it and placing things around. I know that you moved from Texas to Louisiana during this time, and I was thinking about what this point of light could mean to somebody. And that includes like a guiding star, and sort of like wherever you are in the world, you can look up and there's this thing beyond compositionally. Like, what were you getting at with that point of light? Was it?
Yeah, I mean, I like generally look for things and don't always find them where the idea or the symbol or the subject is something that can work different ways, different levels, and so it's one that's really nice. The idea of point of light is really nice in it being this idea of a celestial orb, something that's sort of more or less constant around the world. And as a painter, thinking about light, it's like, what's the point of light? It's the point of like kind of actually being able to see, and so it's sort of really basic in one sense.
It's almost everything for a painter.
Yeah, yeah. And then again, like the idea of light, spark of hope, this kind of thing. I mean, it's no secret we're living in kind of fraught times, and so it's for me that it was really important. Again, this work to be like kind of a bit of a respite as well. I see them as really kind of calm and quiet, and that's sort of maybe my form of activism is kind of creating something that is a bit more, it's a comfort, maybe something that's an ugly word but nice, right?
Yeah.
Something can be nice. So yeah, it's multi-layered, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, like, your studio practice is a bit of therapy too. And then we go from point of light, but the way that you paint has always been the thing that I've loved about your work the most. It's like the way that you handle paint, the way that you stylize things, the way that you abstract things, and it's really apparent in this piece. But I'll point to this piece since everyone can see it. How light comes through the foliage on this piece and almost these rectangles and squares is like fascinating, and it tricks your eye. The first time that you see it, it looks normal, but the more you study Bradley's work, the more these little like unexpected moments reveal themselves. How much of that is conscious? How much are you like pulling against reality and trying to create your own thing? How much are you stylizing and abstracting, and how much are you trying to capture what's really there?
Yeah, I was speaking with this about someone earlier today, and that like, do you always paint landscapes? Do you always paint sort of foliage? And I was like, not exactly, but it is a great thing to paint in that it creates a situation, it creates a scenario where you really have to, as a painter, as an artist, you can't paint everything really. I mean, you can, but it would take you forever. So it's like it creates a scenario you have to like invent, simplify, abstract, and so. As a painter, the more and more I do it, the more I kind of know like certain subjects or certain scenarios are going to like present themselves a great opportunity to like kind of just paint beautifully, hopefully. And yeah, I love like finding these things, like the windows, and then within the window, it's like there's other windows. There's like 1,000 windows in this painting, and so I also love the idea of painting within a painting, having something that gets stacked. It's a great way to show depth, show space on this flat surface. So it's like it's all these things kind of wrapped up in one.
Yeah, we forget this is just paint.
Yeah, it's just paint. It's an illusion.
And you mentioned somebody was asking if you always paint landscapes. You don't. We actually discussed what the show could be about. I'm often drawn to I think of like, when I think of you, I think of very lush. So I wanted to see kind of the whole show embody that. But I'm really glad that this interior scene close to the door came into the show, because this is also a massive part of who you are as an artist and a painter, and it feels so different than these lush pieces, but they're really not. Can you break down how that comes into your work and how they relate?
Yeah, it's like I was saying before, like everything comes from my lived experience for the most part, and so just sort of like always open and receptive to ideas, to images, to imagery. And to me, it's like that painting is no different than any of the other ones. It's all sort of the same, obviously the same person, but the same painter. And it kind of like, it's sort of like seeing one of these other paintings broken down in a way, like pulling all the pieces out and kind of laying them out on the door in this instance. And in terms of the construction of that, it's all like kind of cobbled together. Like I knew it was going to be a door painting. I knew there was going to be bits and pieces of kid drawings, little tchotchkes and trinkets and this kind of thing. And I love the again, like the idea of painting that in a way that kind of preserves some of the charm of it, of a child's drawing, kind of immediacy of that. And then didn't another one of those ones I didn't really know where it was going. Kind of, I just had these like rough ideas and just sort of jumped into it. So that I knew that the sliver on the side was going to be a big point where the kind of action was going to be in that painting. And it's a painting that I started a long time ago and just like had the structure and kind of set it aside for a long period of time, and would kind of paint on it a little bit here and there, and then slowly over time I kind of like slowly honed in on it. But it's become a really like sentimental kind of sappy painting, just because it sort of sat in the circumstances of my life and my situation. The source of that is Houston home that is now as of yesterday sold. So very yeah, thank you. Very bittersweet, and so now it's like a little time capsule in a way of that time. And I'm grateful for that. And there's a little piece of each one of the family members in there. And again, it's sort of sappy, sort of sentimental, but that's okay. It's totally okay.
I like that painting has a bit of a callback to our last show together too.
Mm-hmm.
If any of you visited the last show of Bradley's that I had here, there was a massive painting on this wall behind us that featured this wooden fence that had these beautiful shadows cast, and that is in the background there. So, and we're seeing the point of light right over that fence, kind of peeking over. I mean, I think that piece too, you know, talking about these points in time, the way that your practice has always worked has never been in these like really defined series of, okay, I'm going to be exploring this idea, then I'm going to be exploring this idea, like so many artists work in their studios. But actually, it's all of this work, though, you know, as different as it may look, it is right now. It's happening to you right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. As a way of like, it's almost like thinking about an archive, like of like thoughts and images and imagery, and even now paintings that I've been doing in a certain period of time, I have like there's existing bodies of work that all kind of fit into like sort of categories, and so it's really rewarding and really useful to have those different wells to kind of dip back into over time. But yeah, it's like it's even if, you know, for instance, the honeymoon painting in the back is from 12 years ago, and it still has a relevance. It sort of references New Orleans, it references Houston, and it's there's ways to kind of update and freshen up the idea and the imagery, and it's the idea of like invention and constantly like just sort of like just being receptive to all the things around you, know, all the opportunities to make paintings.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think that the artist you were 12 years ago wouldn't have made it like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, maybe it could have been a good painting, but it's definitely different. Probably a good painting. But
probably a good painting.
Yeah, maybe.
I'd like to open it up to questions too. Yeah, Lori.
Okay, Bradley. So, is your time as an educator, all the time that you spend talking to students about painting, does it peek into your thinking about how you paint? Does it become a separate world? Do you keep it separate? Does it influence?
Yeah, it does. I think like long ago, I think like that when you're a young artist, like exiting graduate school, you have opportunities, and at a certain point you kind of realize like, all right, it's not working so efficiently. So like long ago when I was teaching, it's like kind of figure out a way to make it useful for studio practice for my own paintings, and it could be just as simple as like the research aspect of it, or the way you have to communicate certain things, certain ideas to students, and it obviously like keeps you on your toes, keeps you fresh, keeps you updated, I think it's just like it's mostly the way I would see it, kind of bridging the gap or sort of transitioning from one to the other. Is the idea of like really intensely like researching specific topics, specific themes, ideas, and just kind of like seeing lots of things. That's a biggest one of the biggest parts about education as an artist, is like seeing things, whether it be paintings or sculptures, this or that. Thank you. Yes, young man in the front.
How do you come up with inspiration for painting?
That's a really good question. I don't really. I really kind of need something concrete. I need a starting point, something that I can kind of hold on to and kind of build off of, like an armature or just something a little bit more, straightforward. And then once I have that, I do have the ability to kind of invent things. And so it could often depend on the scenario in the painting. It might call for a certain thing, or that might be an opportunity to kind of like contradict something that is expected. So you can kind of turn it back on the viewer and sort of pull the rug out from them a little bit. If they expect a certain thing, you can kind of do the opposite, and it makes for a little bit of a friction in the experience. Thank you for your question.
Great job, Ollie.
Yes. Yeah, I think we sort of alluded to it, but I didn't speak about the duality, like the two pillar kind of moments there. But it just sort of comes back to the idea that I had conceiving the show as to like sort of starting with the structure being really kind of having symmetry or having asymmetry, and then it's a moment when the paintings where they can almost like if I were to go a little bit further in one direction, they could become more abstracted. And so I'm kind of like always liking to ride the line. And so that where you see that appearing is just that the idea of the structure and building off of that, having something really solid, and then within that structure, kind of making the painting work. And it's just a balance of color and all the other painterly things.
As a reminder to yourself or the viewer.
What the structure?
The structure.
Yeah, I think it. I think, yeah, for myself mostly, just because a lot of it's not evident unless someone as insightful as yourself can kind of pick up and see the things. And it's mostly like I think it has a lot to do with what we were talking about earlier, like the kind of upheaval, turmoil. Not to make it sound crazy, but like moving is stressful. So having something really definitive, solid was really really important. Yeah.
Okay.
Painting. Very early. I mean, well, I didn't know what painting was, and I very early just had the knack for drawing, for like kind of creating things, and didn't really know what painting was. And where I grew up, there was not a lot of exposure to that kind of thing, but you sort of like grasp onto the little things along the way. It could be like album covers. It could be, for me, it was like album covers and comic books and little bits and pieces of things, of culture, of color, of media, that kind of thing. And it wasn't until maybe high school, and there was a woman sitting right up here a minute ago. Oh no. I'll embarrass her when she comes back, maybe. But like a special lady to me, my high school art teacher is now kind of my aunt, was really instrumental. There she is, Carrie Radley, high school art teacher. So she was important. My parents are here as well. I have my in-laws are here as well. My father-in-law was an artist as well, and so all these little people pieces, things you kind of cobble together over time. I didn't know how to do it. It's like, and there's definitely a better way to do it now. And young people today have so much more access to all these things, the internet, of course. I knew early, didn't really know what that meant and how to do it, but maybe could have got done sooner than later. But I'm happy with the path I've been on.
Well, you talk like you're new to this, but
yeah. Yes.
I mean, you know your history.
Mm-hmm,
From one
mm-hmm.
painter to another.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell it's not like you're necessarily directly.
Right.
But when it becomes this whole blend of like
Mm-hmm.
collage and Avery and layer, it's like you can tell what an artist is.
Yeah.
that helps with teaching,
Yes.
showing,
Yeah.
referencing all the time.
Yeah, you're like, you see something, you're like, have you thought about this? Have you seen this person? You're just sort of like doing what you can to kind of plug people in, and it sort of comes into play too with like coming across things to paint, right? You see something and like that either like looks like a painting I made or a painting I should or could make, but it also is like that looks like this person, and I see like this painting is from France, and it's like, yeah, I get it. Like I went to Tuscany, and you're like, yeah, I know, I understand now why people came here to paint for centuries. So part of it's that too, just kind of having that recognition. So
I like hearing what you said about having the structural elements, so that you almost mantras or things that you're thinking about. Once you have that structure, do you ever catch yourself like getting too realistic?
yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it comes with the time spent, right? The 20,000 hours or whatever. The idea of just like comfort and confidence with paint handling, paint mixing, all those things. But it is, yeah, you said mantra, and that's what I always say. It's like my mantra is just to like always like pull back, and it's especially with I feel like it happens more and more, like maybe the longer I do it, the older I get. It's just sort of like being efficient is really important in general, but like I like the idea of completing the painting with as few marks as possible. And so constant mantras would be like reminding myself to kind of stop and just sit and look for a while and kind of dissect it and see like what the painting needs. I'll tell my students all the time, it's like you just kind of have to sit and look, and the painting at a certain point in its progress, it does sort of tell you what it needs, And so it's really just about like reminding to pause and like kind of sit with it and sort of go slow, and the realization of like, yeah, like it's often not necessary to paint every square inch 1,000% rendered like to a T, especially with like the sort of painting I'm after, the sort of painting I want to do. It's more, the more painterly the better, essentially, and in finding that ever elusive like when it's finished line. It's just sort of like it's as simple as like sitting with it for, I think it's done, I put it away for a bit and come back to it a week or so later, and just like if nothing bugs me really, if nothing jumps out, because it's like I'm really particular, really receptive to all the bits and pieces, and I know every square inch, and so if nothing jumps out at me, then I'm just sort of leave it. You can keep going forever, but it's not necessary. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like it's the source image was taken in France, and it is like there's like in reality there was like a lake here, and so it's very much that kind of lake path. This is the painting I think most that here is the most direct, but within the directness, again, the idea of like being able to kind of explore painting and like just like kind of go in on it.
Is it a real place in France?
Yes, yeah, it's a real place.
Kind of imaginary, right?
Yeah, it's not so important about where it is to me. That's where it came from. I know exactly where I was, but it's more about the composition, the light, the paint handling itself. Thank you for your question.
Well, thank you all for being here. Please ask Bradley questions, and today or this next week, 40.
On
Right?
Tuesday, yeah.
So
yeah.
also wish him a happy birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.